You want to know how we survived? How the mighty Zolaxian Armada, with its planet-cracking weapons and dimensional phase-shifting technology, got its collective asses handed to them by a species that still finds fart jokes amusing? Commander Vexlar flicked all four of his eye stalks in what passed for eye-rolling among the Quatari. His exoskeleton clicked as he shifted uncomfortably on the interview chair. "That's exactly what I want to know," replied the journalist, her recording drone hovering silently beside her. The entire galaxy watched as the Zolaxian conquest machine that had devoured 17 star systems came to a grinding halt. And rumor has it, it was because of a single transmission from a backwater planet called Earth. "Not a rumor," Vexlar sighed, mandibles clicking in resignation. Though calling Earth a backwater is like calling a supernova a warm day. Technically correct, but missing several orders of magnitude of reality. The journalist leaned forward. "So it's true? One human stopped the invasion?" "One human," Vexlar confirmed, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "And that's the scariest part." He paused, chitinous fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. "You know what? Let me start from the beginning. Your viewers deserve the whole story, especially now that the Galactic Council has declassified the records." The invasion of the Quatari homeworld had gone exactly as everyone expected. Terribly. The Zolaxians had swept through the outer colonies, their bioweapons turning lush agricultural worlds into barren wastelands within days. The defense grid, which our engineers had assured us was absolutely impenetrable, lasted approximately 12 minutes against their quantum disruption fields. I was commanding the last meaningful line of defense above our homeworld. My flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, was flanked by the remnants of our once proud fleet, 17 vessels of varying sizes, all damaged, all running on emergency power. Facing us was the Zolaxian command ship, a monstrosity the size of a small moon, accompanied by over 200 support vessels. "Status report," I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady as the bridge crew frantically worked their stations. "Shields at 12%, weapon systems operating at 23% capacity, and life support is, well, it's supporting life for now," replied my tactical officer, Kriva. Always the optimist, that one. "And the evacuation?" "Approximately 30% of the civilian population has reached the emergency shelters," said my communications officer, Taldor. "But at the current rate of bombardment..." He didn't need to finish. We all knew. The shelters would become tombs within hours. "Options?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The silence on the bridge was deafening. "We have one," ventured Zintara, my normally quiet science officer. All eye stalks turned toward her. "There's a relatively primitive species we've been monitoring for potential first contact. They call themselves humans. Their technological development is unusual." "Unusual how?" I asked, grasping at any possibility, no matter how remote. "They've developed nuclear weapons before achieving unified planetary governance," Zintara explained. "They've sent crude probes beyond their solar system while still burning fossil fuels. Their computing technology advanced from mechanical calculators to quantum processors in less than a century. They're chaotic." "And how exactly does this help us?" Kriva demanded. "The Zolaxians conquer through predictability," Zintara continued. "Their algorithmic warfare anticipates standard defensive protocols, but humans, they're anything but standard, and they have an unexpected talent for warfare." "You want us to ask a pre-FTL species for military advice?" I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. "That's your plan?" "Not just any human," Zintara clarified, manipulating her console to display a profile. "This one." The image showed a bipedal creature with less melanin than most of its species, facial hair around the mouth region, and an expression that even to my alien perception seemed to convey both boredom and amusement simultaneously. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "His designation is Dr. Ethan Winters. He's what humans call a game theorist specializing in asymmetric conflict scenarios. He's also developed several successful interplanetary warfare simulations that have uncanny parallels to actual conflicts in our sector." "Wait," Kriva interrupted. "Are you saying this creature has accurately predicted interstellar conflicts without even knowing aliens exist?" "Precisely," Zintara said. "And according to our surveillance, the Zolaxian battle strategies bear remarkable similarities to what humans call optimal play in their strategic games. I believe he could identify weaknesses we've overlooked." I stared at the image. This strange alien who might hold our salvation. "Can we establish contact?" "Yes, but it would violate Galactic Protocol 7B regarding non-interference with pre-FTL civilizations," Taldor pointed out. I gestured toward the view screen showing the massive Zalaxian fleet preparing for their final assault. I think we're a bit past worrying about protocols, don't you? Fair point, Taldor conceded. We can send a targeted quantum transmission to his personal communication device. Their technology is primitive, but I can make it work. Do it, I ordered. And make it quick. We have approximately 20 minutes before the Zulaxians break through our last line of defense. As Taldor hurried to establish the connection, I couldn't help thinking this was our final desperate act. Reaching out to an alien who didn't even know we existed, asking for help against an enemy they couldn't comprehend. The situation was beyond absurd. But then again, as my clutch mother always said, when drowning in quantum acid, grab onto even a particle of hope. Dr. Ethan Winters was having what humans eloquently refer to as a day from hell. First, his coffee maker had chosen this particular morning to demonstrate entropy in action by spectacularly self-destructing. Then his department chair had informed him that his research grant application had been denied due to being, and these were the exact words, too speculative for practical application. Finally, his ex had called to tell him she was getting married to the corporate lawyer she'd left him for. So when his phone started glitching, displaying strange symbols and emitting sounds that definitely weren't part of its factory settings, Ethan's first thought wasn't, aliens are contacting me, but rather, great, now I need a new phone too. He was about to perform the universal tech fix, turning it off and on again, when the symbols coalesced into readable text. Emergency contact from Quatari Defense Force. Civilization facing extinction. Require immediate strategic consultation. This is not a prank or simulation. Ethan stared at his phone. Then he did what any reasonable human would do. He laughed. Nice try, Morgan, he said to his empty apartment, assuming his colleague was playing an elaborate joke. The alien font is a nice touch, but you need to work on your premise. No advanced civilization would reach out to a random Earth academic for help. The phone buzzed again. Not a joke. Zulaxian forces attacking our homeworld. Planetary shields failing. Identified you as expert in asymmetric warfare strategies. Please respond. Okay, seriously, how are you doing this? Ethan muttered, examining his phone for signs of tampering. Did you hack my phone? Is this some kind of AR game promotion? The phone screen suddenly shifted, displaying what appeared to be a real-time video feed. The image showed creatures that were decidedly not human operating what was unmistakably the bridge of a spacecraft. Explosions periodically rocked the frame, and warning lights flashed in alien scripts. 17 minutes until planetary defenses fail. 8.2 billion Quatari civilians at risk. Please respond if you can assist. Ethan sat down heavily on his couch. Either this was the most elaborate prank in history, or he was actually being contacted by aliens during what appeared to be a life-or-death space battle. How can I possibly help? He finally managed to say. The relief on the alien commander's face was obvious despite the vast biological differences between their species. Zulaxian forces use algorithmic warfare based on game theory optimization. Your research on suboptimal strategies, creating unexpected advantages, suggests potential countermeasures. Need immediate tactical recommendations. Wait, you've read my research? Ethan asked, momentarily distracted from the apocalyptic scenario unfolding on his phone screen. Monitored Earth communications for potential first contact. Your papers on winning by not playing to win and chaotic good, disrupting optimal play in zero-sum conflicts, particularly relevant. Those were theoretical frameworks for video game balance, not actual warfare, Ethan protested. Principles transferable. Zulaxians approach warfare like your optimal players. They cannot comprehend deliberately suboptimal tactical choices that create strategic advantages. Please advise. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, mind racing. This couldn't be happening. And yet, if it was... Okay, he said, switching into the analytical mode that had earned him his reputation in academic circles. I need to understand their capabilities and yours. What are their primary weapon systems? What resources do you have left? And most importantly, what would they never expect you to do? As the alien commander, who introduced himself as Vexlar, began outlining the situation, Ethan grabbed his laptop and started taking notes. It was surreal, discussing interstellar battle tactics while sitting in his apartment in sweatpants, but the stakes were too high to dwell on the absurdity. So these Zulaxians, Ethan summarized, they've essentially turned warfare into a solved game like tic-tac-toe, where they always know the optimal move? Correct. Their computational capabilities allow them to calculate optimal responses to standard tactics. All previous civilizations they've conquered followed predictable defensive protocols. Then the solution is simple. Ethan said, a plan forming in his mind. You need to play a different game entirely, one they don't recognize as warfare. Looking back, I should have been skeptical. Here was this alien creature from a species that still hadn't unified their own planet, proposing a strategy against the most formidable military force in the known galaxy. But desperation makes fools of us all, and we were very, very desperate. Run that by me one more time, I said, trying to process the human's suggestion. You want us to, what exactly? Surrender, the human, Ethan, repeated calmly, but not in the way they expect. My bridge crew exchanged glances that universally translated as, the commander has lost his mind listening to this primitive alien. The Zalaxians expect one of two responses, Ethan continued. Either you fight to the last ship, following standard defensive protocols, or you surrender unconditionally. Their algorithms are optimized for these scenarios, so you need to introduce a third option they haven't calculated. Which is? I prompted. A conditional surrender with terms so bizarre they'll have to actually consider them rather than following their standard conquest protocol. I clicked my mandibles thoughtfully. What kind of terms? That's where it gets interesting, Ethan said, a strange expression appearing on his face, what I later learned humans call a smirk. You're going to challenge them to a game. A game, I repeated flatly. We're facing extinction, and you want us to invite the Zalaxians to play? Not just any game, Ethan clarified. A human game, specifically a game called poker. It combines probability calculation, resource management, and, most importantly, psychological warfare through deliberate misinformation. And why would the Zulaxians agree to this? Kriva demanded. Because you'll frame it as a test of superior intelligence, Ethan explained. The Zulaxians believe their computational approach to warfare proves their evolutionary superiority, right? Challenge that belief directly. Suggest that if they're truly superior, they should be able to master any form of competition, especially one devised by a primitive species. It was absurd, juvenile, completely unorthodox. It was also our only remaining option. What do we have to lose? I said finally. Send the message. And so, with 17 Quatari ships barely functioning, with our planetary shields failing, with billions of lives hanging in the balance, we sent what must have been the strangest communication in the history of interstellar warfare to the Zulaxian command. We propose alternative resolution to conflict. Challenge you to demonstrate superior intelligence through game of skill from recently discovered primitive world. Victory grants you unconditional surrender. Defeat requires your immediate withdrawal from Quatari space. Refusal will be documented as acknowledgement of intellectual inferiority. The bridge fell silent as we waited. 1 minute passed. 2. They're responding, Taldor announced, surprise evident in his voice. The message was brief, explain game parameters. We'll evaluate proposal. I couldn't believe it. They were actually considering it. They took the bait, I told Ethan through our quantum link. Now what? Now, Ethan said. We teach them how to play poker, with a few special house rules. The next 3 hours were among the most surreal in galactic history. While the Zulaxian fleet maintained position just outside striking distance of the Quatari homeworld, representatives from both sides met in a neutral space station to learn the rules of poker. The human, Ethan, remained connected via quantum communication, explaining the game to both parties simultaneously. The Zulaxians, confident in their computational superiority, quickly grasped the mathematical elements, probability distributions, expected value calculations, optimal betting strategies. What they couldn't grasp, was the concept of bluffing. So you're saying, the Zulaxian High Commander Shurvash clarified, multiple appendages twitching in confusion, that a central element of this game involves deliberately representing your position as stronger or weaker than it actually is? Exactly, Ethan confirmed. You might have a strong hand and bet as if it's weak to encourage others to commit more resources. Or you might have a weak hand but bet aggressively as if it's strong to force others to abandon potentially winning positions. But that's inefficient, Shurvash protested. Optimal play would involve calculating probabilities and betting accordingly. In a game of perfect information, yes, Ethan agreed. But poker is a game of incomplete information. The skill lies in managing uncertainty and manipulating your opponent's perception. The Zalaxian commanders conferred among themselves, their translators occasionally emitting phrases like primitive psychological tactics and trivially computable optimal strategy. Finally, Shurvash turned back to the communication screen. We accept this challenge. Our quantum processors can calculate all possible hand combinations and optimal responses. Your primitive deception strategies will be ineffective against our superior analysis. Ethan smiled. Excellent. There's just one more thing. Since this game comes from Earth, we'll be using a human as the dealer. A neutral third party who manages the game mechanics. Unacceptable, Shurvash declared. We have no assurance of this human's neutrality. The dealer doesn't play, Ethan explained. They just manage the cards and ensure rules are followed. Think of them as the physical embodiment of the game parameters. Besides, you've already acknowledged humans are primitive compared to your species. Surely you're not suggesting a primitive creature could somehow outmaneuver your superior intellect. It was beautifully done, I had to admit. Ethan had manipulated the Zolaxian pride as skillfully as he claimed humans manipulated cards. Very well, Shurvash conceded. When can this human dealer arrive? That's the thing, Ethan said casually. I'll need to be there in person. Now, I should pause here to explain something about humans that wasn't in our xenobiological database. They're physically unimpressive by galactic standards. No natural armor, no venomous appendages, limited sensory capabilities. But they possess one trait that makes them uniquely dangerous. They're recklessly, almost pathologically curious. When we told Ethan we could open a quantum fold to transport him directly to our location, his immediate response wasn't fear or hesitation, but enthusiasm. You have teleportation technology? That's incredible. How does it manage the quantum decoherence problem? Does it create a new copy or physically transfer the original matter? Is there a size limitation? Dr. Winters, I interrupted, we're in the middle of an extinction-level crisis. Perhaps we could discuss theoretical physics after we've prevented the annihilation of my species. Right. Sorry, he said, looking slightly abashed. Send your quantum fold, I guess. I'm ready. There is one more thing you should know, I added. The atmospheric composition on the station is different from Earth's. You'll need an environmental suit, which we can provide, but it may be uncomfortable. Will it keep me alive? Yes. Then I can handle uncomfortable. And so, within 20 minutes, a human set foot off Earth for the first time in history, not as part of some grand exploration mission, but to play cards with aliens to prevent a genocide. The environmental suit we'd hastily constructed looked ridiculous on him. A bulbous helmet attached to a form-fitting body covering with various tubes and filters. But Ethan seemed more fascinated than bothered, examining the alien technology with undisguised wonder, even as he prepared for the highest-stakes poker game in history. So, just to be clear, he said as we escorted him to the neutral chamber where the game would take place. If I mess this up, an entire civilization dies? Essentially, yes, I confirmed. No pressure then, he muttered, then squared his shoulders. Let's do this. The game chamber was a hastily repurposed diplomatic meeting room. A large circular table dominated the center, with the Qatari delegation, myself and 2 advisors, on one side, the Zulaxian delegation, High Commander Zurvash and 3 sub-commanders, on the other, and Ethan at the head position with a device he called a dealer button, and several cases of physical playing cards. Before we begin, Ethan announced, I'll explain the basic rules once more. We're playing Texas Hold'em poker. Each player receives 2 private cards, followed by 5 community cards revealed in stages. Betting occurs after each reveal. The best 5-card combination wins. He proceeded to explain blinds, betting rounds, hand rankings, and all the other details that seemed so trivial given the circumstances. The Zulaxians listened intently, occasionally interjecting with clarifying questions that revealed their algorithmic approach. What is the exact probability of drawing a flush given 2 suited cards in hand? Or, is there a mathematically optimal betting strategy for each possible hand configuration? Ethan answered patiently, all while setting up the physical cards. I noticed he'd brought multiple decks, carefully breaking the seals on a fresh pack. Why so many cards? I asked quietly. Casino-grade security, he whispered back. Fresh deck for each hand, clear plastic cards so they can't be marked. I want to eliminate any possible accusations of cheating. Finally, everything was ready. The Zolaxians had connected various computational devices to their neural interfaces, presumably to calculate odds in real time. My own team looked nervous but determined. One final clarification, Ethan said. The game continues until one side has all the chips. Given the stakes, I suggest we use symbolic chips rather than actual currency. Each side starts with equal amounts. Agreed, Shurvash said. Let us begin this primitive contest so we can proceed with our conquest. Ethan smiled thinly. Shuffle up and deal. The first few hands were tense but unremarkable. The Zolaxians played with clinical precision, betting exactly according to pot odds and hand strength. My team, following Ethan's earlier advice, played conservatively, folding all but the strongest hands. They're establishing a baseline, Ethan murmured to me during a brief break. Their algorithms are cataloging our betting patterns to identify optimal counters. Now we implement Phase 2. When play resumed, our strategy shifted subtly. We began making what appeared to be mathematical errors in our betting, slightly overvaluing certain hands, occasionally folding with favorable odds. Small mistakes, but noticeable to the Zolaxians' computational analysis. They think they've identified our psychological weaknesses, Ethan explained quietly. Now they'll adjust their play to exploit these perceived patterns. Sure enough, the Zolaxians became more aggressive, pushing advantages when our betting suggested uncertainty. They won several sizable pots, their confidence visibly growing. Now, Ethan whispered as he dealt a new hand, comes the trap. What followed was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Having established predictable patterns, we began selectively breaking them in ways the Zolaxians couldn't anticipate. We bluffed with weak hands when their algorithms predicted folding. We played passively with strong hands when they expected aggression. The Zolaxian commanders grew visibly frustrated as their predicted outcomes increasingly diverged from reality. Their computational devices seemed to be recalibrating constantly, trying to identify the pattern in what was essentially controlled chaos. This is inefficient gameplay, Gervash protested after a particularly large pot went to our side. You are deliberately employing suboptimal strategies. There's no rule against playing badly, Ethan pointed out mildly, unless you're suggesting your superior intellect can't adapt to unexpected behavior. It was the perfect provocation. The Zolaxians, so convinced of their computational superiority, couldn't accept that their algorithms might be fundamentally unsuited to a game built around deception and psychological manipulation. Hour by hour, the chip stacks shifted in our favor. The Zolaxians tried various approaches: ultra-conservative play, hyper-aggression, mixed strategies. But each time, Ethan would whisper adjustments to our team that seemed to anticipate and counter their adaptations. How are you doing this? I asked during another break, genuinely puzzled. How can you predict their responses better than their own quantum computers? Ethan grinned. I'm not predicting their specific moves. I'm predicting how their algorithmic thinking will approach the problem. It's like playing chess against a computer. It calculates millions of possible moves, but it still follows programmatic logic. Humans have been exploiting that gap for centuries. The final hand was almost anticlimactic. The Zolaxian High Commander, down to his last chips, pushed all in with what their calculations must have shown as a strong hand. Our representative called with an objectively weaker hand that nonetheless had specific odds against the commander's likely holdings. When the final card was revealed, giving us a barely winning hand, Gervash's appendages twitched violently. This outcome was statistically improbable, he declared. Your player called with a 32.7% chance of victory. It is irrational behavior. And yet, Ethan said quietly, it worked. That's the lesson humans learned millennia ago that your algorithms haven't grasped. Sometimes the mathematically correct play is predictable, and therefore exploitable. The silence that followed was profound. The Zolaxian commanders conferred among themselves, their translators catching occasional phrases like fundamental reassessment and strategic paradigm failure. Finally, Gervash turned to address me directly. We have analyzed this contest extensively, he announced. Our conclusion is that while our computational approach is objectively superior for conventional warfare, it appears inadequate for anticipating the chaotic decision-making of less advanced species. It was perhaps the closest the Zolaxians had ever come to admitting defeat. As agreed, Gervash continued, we will withdraw from Quatari space immediately. However, we request permission to continue studying this poker game. It presents unexpected challenges to our strategic modeling. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Permission granted, I managed to say, trying to maintain diplomatic composure while internally celebrating our civilization's unexpected salvation. As the Zolaxian delegation prepared to depart, Gervash approached Ethan directly. Human, he said, multiple eyes focusing intently. Your species' approach to conflict is inefficient, unpredictable, and occasionally irrational. Thank you, Ethan replied without missing a beat. It was not intended as a compliment, Gervash clarified. I know, Ethan said with a smile. But from my perspective, it absolutely is one. So that's it? The journalist asked, breaking Vexlar's narrative flow. A single human with a deck of cards stopped the most powerful military force in the galaxy? Not exactly, Vexlar replied, manipulating his datapad to display historical records. The poker game was just the beginning. What truly changed the galactic balance of power was what came after. The screen showed images of human diplomatic missions, scientific exchanges, and joint military exercises with various alien species. The Zulaxians withdrew as agreed, but they became obsessed with understanding human strategic thinking. They sent observers to Earth, studied human history, analyzed everything from their primitive board games to their military conflicts, and they discovered something that terrified them. Which was, the journalist prompted. Humans had been fighting among themselves for their entire history. Every possible approach to warfare, from rigid hierarchical command structures to chaotic guerrilla tactics, from overwhelming force to subtle deception, they'd tried it all against each other. They'd even developed game theory specifically to understand conflict better. Vexlar's eye stalks drooped slightly in what might have been awe or residual fear. In essence, the Zulaxians realized they'd nearly started a war with a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against themselves. A species that, despite their technological limitations, had developed strategic thinking far beyond what our algorithmic approaches could model. So the Zulaxians just gave up their conquest plans? They completely restructured their approach to interspecies relations, Vexlar confirmed. They still believed in their own superiority, but they recognized that conquest might not be the optimal expression of that superiority. Instead, they began offering their computational capabilities as a service to other species, in exchange for cultural exchange, particularly access to human strategic thinking. And Dr. Winters? The journalist asked. What happened to him? Ah, Vexlar's mandibles clicked in what his species used for laughter. That's perhaps the most ironic part of the story. After saving our civilization with his game theory expertise, he returned to Earth to find his research suddenly in high demand. The Galactic Council, while not formally acknowledging Earth's existence to humanity at large, arranged for his theoretical papers on interspecies game theory to receive substantial funding. Does he know? About his real impact, I mean? We maintain indirect contact, Vexlar admitted. Officially, first contact with Earth is still pending Galactic Council approval. Unofficially, several species have established relationships with key humans who demonstrated particular insights valuable to galactic stability. The journalist's recording drone beeped, indicating it had reached memory capacity. One final question, Commander, she said. Based on your experience, what should the galaxy learn from this incident? Vexlar considered for a moment, all four eye stalks focusing in the Quatari equivalent of deep contemplation. That intelligence and predictability are not synonymous, he said finally. The Zulaxians' mistake wasn't insufficient computational power. It was the assumption that a truly intelligent opponent would always choose the mathematically optimal action. He gestured toward the window, where Earth was visible as a distant blue dot among countless stars. Humans taught us that sometimes, the most sophisticated strategy is choosing to play a different game entirely. And that's why, despite their relatively primitive technology, every major power in the galaxy now carefully monitors that little blue planet. Because someday, humanity will join the galactic community officially. And on that day, everything will change. The journalist nodded, thanking the commander for his time. As she packed up her equipment, Vexlar activated his personal communication device. Dr. Winters? Yes, the interview is complete. They still don't suspect the full extent of our arrangement. No, I didn't mention the other poker games. Or the chess tournament with the Arcturian hive mind. Or the, what did you call it? Rock, paper, scissors incident with the Vorgon Dominion. He paused, listening to the human's response. Yes, I agree. Some stories are best saved for another day. Speaking of which, it's Tuesday on your calendar, isn't it? Our regular poker night. I've been practicing that poker face you mentioned. As he ended the communication, Vexlar couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. 10 cycles ago, the Quatari had never heard of humans. Now, their strategic thinking was reshaping galactic politics. Their games were being studied in military academies across a dozen worlds, and their peculiar approach to conflict, that bizarre mixture of mathematics, psychology, and occasional irrationality, had become the subject of intense study. All because, when faced with imminent extinction, The Quatari had made the desperation move of reaching out to a species that still thought fart jokes were funny. The universe, Vexlar mused, had a peculiar sense of humor itself. Epilogue. 2 years after saving the Quatari civilization, Dr. Ethan Winters sat in his university office, ostensibly grading papers but actually reviewing the latest diplomatic brief from the Galactic Council's covert Earth liaison. A knock at his door interrupted his reading. "Come in," he called, quickly switching his screen to a mundane spreadsheet. A young woman entered, looking slightly nervous. "Dr. Winters, I'm Lily Barrett, your new graduate assistant." "Ah, yes," Ethan said, standing to shake her hand. "The theoretical physicist who's inexplicably interested in game theory applications. Your application was unusual." "Unusual how?" she asked, a slightly too innocent expression on her face. Ethan smiled knowingly. "Well, for starters, it contains several mathematical proofs that use numerical systems that aren't taught anywhere on Earth." Her expression didn't change, but her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "And," Ethan continued casually, "your supposed undergraduate thesis on multidimensional decision trees in nonlinear conflict scenarios contains passages that directly reference the Zulaxian strategic doctrine, which, officially, I've never heard of." Now she did react, eyes widening slightly. "It's all right," Ethan interrupted gently. "You can tell the Andromedan Diplomatic Corps that their cover identities need work. Human universities typically require actual transcripts, not just impressively worded credentials." Lily, or whatever her real name was, hesitated for just a moment before her demeanor changed completely. Her posture straightened, her eyes sharpened, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost its nervous quality. "How long have you known," she asked, "that the Andromedans have been sending observers?" "Since the third exchange student who was mysteriously interested in my obscure academic specialty," Ethan replied, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. I'm already advising representatives from 6 other species. What's one more?" She sat down, visibly recalculating her approach. 6. The Council only officially acknowledges 3 covert contact programs. Ethan laughed. "Yes, well, interspecies bureaucracy seems to be a universal constant. The Arcturians don't know about the Vorgans. The Zulaxians pretend they're not communicating with me at all, and everyone politely ignores the fact that the Quatari have essentially made me an honorary strategic advisor." He leaned back in his chair, studying his visitor with amused interest. "So, what specifically do the Andromedans want to learn? Poker? Chess? Or is it our reality television? The Arcturian ambassador has developed a concerning addiction to cooking competitions." "Actually," she said, dropping all pretense, "we're interested in something called improv comedy. Our predictive models suggest it contains important insights into adaptive thinking under constraints." Ethan blinked, then burst out laughing. "Improv comedy? You crossed 23 light years to learn yes and? Is that not a sophisticated strategic concept?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "Oh, it absolutely is," Ethan assured her, still chuckling. "Just not in the way you're probably expecting, but that's humanity for you. Our most profound insights are often hidden in our most trivial pastimes, which, when you think about it, might be the most human thing of all." Lily, or whatever her real name was, took out a small device that was definitely not human technology and made some adjustments. "This conversation is being recorded for analysis. Is that acceptable?" "Of course," Ethan said, then grinned mischievously. "But fair warning, I'm going to introduce you to something called dad jokes halfway through, and your analysts are going to lose their minds trying to find the strategic significance." "Are these dad jokes an important component of human adaptive thinking?" she asked with complete seriousness. "Absolutely not," Ethan replied cheerfully. "They're terrible. That's the point." As he began explaining the fundamentals of improv comedy to his alien visitor, Ethan couldn't help reflecting on the absurdity of his life since that fateful day when his phone had glitched with an alien distress call. Here he was, a previously overlooked academic, now secretly serving as a cultural ambassador to multiple alien civilizations, all because he understood the strategic value of occasionally making the wrong choice. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Zulaxian High Command was probably still trying to develop algorithms to predict when a human would bluff with 7-2 offsuit, and that thought made him smile more than any academic recognition ever had. Because if humanity had one true superpower, it wasn't technology or mathematics or even warfare. It was unpredictability. The cosmic wildcard that had taken a game of interstellar conquest and completely changed the rules. Meanwhile, billions of humans went about their daily lives, blissfully unaware that phrases like thinking outside the box and concepts like strategic unpredictability had literally saved an alien civilization, and that across the galaxy, advanced species were studiously analyzing everything from poker strategies to improv comedy, trying to understand the chaotic, beautiful mess that was human thinking. Someday, humanity would join the galactic community officially, and when that day came, Ethan suspected the galaxy was in for quite a surprise. Because if one human with a deck of cards could upend an interstellar conquest, imagine what billions of humans with actual spaceships might do. The universe would never be the same. And honestly, that was probably for the best. The end. You seriously expect me to believe that pile of junk is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy? Lieutenant Alex Winters leaned against the laboratory wall, arms crossed, eyebrow raised in classic human skepticism. It looks like something my nephew made in arts and crafts class, with a blindfold on, and possibly a concussion. Dr. Kizkit chittered in annoyance, mandibles clicking together in what humans had come to recognize as the Vesperian equivalent of an eye roll. This pile of junk, as your primitive sensory organs have incorrectly categorized it, is a precursor battlesuit, the only intact specimen ever recovered. Uh-huh. Alex circled the display case, studying what looked like a jumble of metallic plates, crystalline nodes, and thread-like filaments suspended in an anti-grav field. And nobody can use it because... Because, Lieutenant, interjected Ambassador Tholax, his gelatinous form quivering with each syllable. Over 300 different species across 17 galactic federations have attempted to activate it. All have failed. Many have died trying. Alex shrugged. Sounds like operator error to me. The assembled alien dignitaries, representatives from all major spacefaring civilizations, exchanged glances of varying anatomical expressions. The humans' casual dismissal of what was considered the greatest archaeological and military mystery of the last 30,000 cycles was simultaneously infuriating and intriguing. You know what? General Zhukov's voice crackled through Alex's comm unit. Let the kid try it. The room erupted in a cacophony of protests, from high-pitched Arcturian squealing to the subsonic rumbles of the Jovian ambassador. General! Dr. Kizkit's mandibles flared in alarm. The human will certainly die. The neural feedback alone? Yeah, save it for the bug funeral. Alex stepped forward, already unzipping his standard-issue jacket. How do I put this thing on anyway? Here's a little secret about humans that the rest of the galaxy just can't wrap their various types of brain structures around. We're stupidly, borderline suicidally curious. Ever since we figured out that sticking our hands into fire hurts, we've been doing increasingly dangerous things just to see what happens. It's basically our species' hobby. So when I, Lieutenant Alexander, I've been court-martialed twice for unnecessary creativity. Winters was presented with an ancient alien battlesuit that had supposedly killed everyone who tried to wear it. My first thought wasn't, gosh, I should avoid that deadly thing. But rather, I bet I could make that work. The assembled alien dignitaries were practically having collective aneurysms as I approached the display case. Dr. Kizkt, our resident insectoid archaeology expert, was making this high-pitched whining sound that the translator couldn't even process, probably cursing me out in Vesperian. The ambassador from Jupiter's moons, basically a sentient gas cloud in a containment suit, had turned a particularly alarming shade of purple. Lieutenant, Ambassador Tholax oozed forward, his translucent body jiggling with concern. Perhaps we should consult with Earth Command before proceeding with this experiment. Already done, I lied, tapping my comm unit where General Zhukov's voice had definitely not given me official permission. The old Russian was probably still asleep in his quarters, dreaming of vodka and military parades. But what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Probably. Dr. Kizkit reluctantly deactivated the containment field with 3 of his upper limbs while signaling distress with his lower ones. The suit has been known to react to biological contact. Please, at least allow us to place neural buffers on your cerebral cortex. Nah, I said, reaching out toward the metallic heap. I like my brain the way it is, unbuffered. The moment my fingertips brushed against the dull surface of what appeared to be a chest plate, several things happened at once. First, the entire artifact lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve, with pulsing blue-white light emanating from every joint and seam. Second, the various pieces began to move, unfolding and rearranging themselves like the world's most expensive origami. Third, every alien in the room collectively lost their shit. And fourth, possibly most importantly, the suit apparently decided I looked like a suitable host and proceeded to attach itself to me, with all the gentle consideration of a facehugger from those old horror vids. "Oh, fuck!" was all I managed before the helmet component sealed itself around my head, plunging me into darkness. Death, Alex decided, was surprisingly comfortable and informative. Instead of the white light, pearly gates, or endless void he might have expected, he found himself standing in what appeared to be an interactive holographic display of the entire known universe. Stars, planets, and galaxies swirled around him, each labeled in crisp, glowing text. Except it wasn't text he recognized, yet somehow he could read it perfectly. "Neural interface successfully established," announced a pleasant, genderless voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome, compatible user. I am Combat Utility Intelligence Template 935, but you may call me CUIT if you prefer." Alex blinked, or at least thought he did. It was hard to tell when your entire sensory experience had been hijacked by alien technology. "Am I dead?" he asked. "Negative. Your biological functions are optimal, though your adrenal system is currently overproducing. I recommend controlled breathing exercises to stabilize your hormone levels." "Thanks for the tip," Alex muttered. "So what is this place? And why am I not a smoldering pile of neural feedback like all the other poor bastards who tried this suit on?" The universe around him zoomed in, focusing on a single spiral galaxy, the Milky Way, then further to Sol, Earth, and finally the exact laboratory he had been standing in. This is the tactical awareness space, a virtual environment allowing for instantaneous information processing and decision-making. As for your survival, you possess a genetic marker sequence that matches the parameters set by my creators. Wait, what? I'm compatible because of my DNA? That's convenient. Not convenient. Intentional. My creators seeded compatible genetic material throughout this galaxy approximately 150,000 of your Earth years ago. Alex let that sink in. You're telling me that ancient aliens tinkered with human DNA just so someone could wear their fancy battle pajamas one day? Affirmative, though your characterization lacks technical precision. Story of my life, Alex sighed. So what now? Can I don't know, take this thing off before everyone outside thinks I'm dead? External sensors indicate that only 2.7 seconds have elapsed since initial contact. The gathered species are currently exhibiting signs of panic, but no one has attempted emergency measures yet. Great. Let's wrap this up before Dr. Bug-Eyes tries to dissect me for science or something. Very well. Would you like a brief overview of basic functions before exiting initialization mode? Hit me. The universe dissolved and reformed into a detailed schematic of the battlesuit, with various systems highlighted and annotated. The precursor Combat Skin Mark 7 is the pinnacle of personal defense and offense technology. Features include, but are not limited to, adaptive nanomolecular armor capable of withstanding direct antimatter impacts, inertial dampening field generators, gravitic manipulation suite, integrated weapon systems including directed energy projectors and kinetic accelerators, atmospheric adaptation for all known environmental types, and a self-contained zero-point energy reactor with an operational lifespan of approximately 5,000 years. Alex whistled. Fancy. Any chance it makes coffee too? Sustenance synthesis is available through the internal replication system, though I would not recommend attempting to create recreational stimulants until you have mastered basic metabolic controls. You're no fun at all, CUIT. Fun was not included in my primary directives. Survival and combat effectiveness were. We'll work on that. Now, how do I switch this thing to, I don't know, a basic don't terrify the aliens mode and get back to reality? Simply visualize a standard humanoid form with minimal offensive capabilities displayed. I will adjust accordingly. Alex concentrated, imagining the suit as something less eldritch horror and more sleek but non-threatening space armor. Excellent choice, CUAT commented. Implementing configuration now, returning to real-time sensory input in 3, 2, 1. The helmet retracted like liquid mercury, revealing Alex's face to the room of panicking aliens. The rest of the suit had transformed from its chaotic jumble into a streamlined, almost elegant configuration of gunmetal gray plates over a black underlayer that seemed to absorb light. Ta-da! Alex announced, spreading his arms and executing a little twirl. Look, Ma, no neural feedback death. The room fell into stunned silence. Dr. Gzicket was the first to speak, his scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. Impossible. The suit. It has integrated with your biology. Yeah, we're besties now. Alex tapped the chest plate, which hummed softly in response. Kuit. That's the AI. Says I've got the right genetic stuff. Apparently, some ancient aliens played mix and match with human DNA way back when. Ambassador Tholax oozed closer, his eye stalks extended to their full length in astonishment. This changes everything. The power balance of the entire galactic community. Whoa, slow down there, Jelly. Alex held up a hand. Nobody said anything about power balances. I just tried on some cool ancient tech. That's all. General Zhukov's voice suddenly boomed from the doorway as the burly Russian strode into the laboratory, his face a storm cloud of fury and confusion. Lieutenant Winters, what in the name of all that is holy do you think you're doing? Alex snapped to attention out of habit, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the alien battlesuit he was wearing. Sir, I can explain. I sincerely doubt that, Zhukov growled, his bushy eyebrows drawn together like angry caterpillars preparing for war. Ambassador Tholax sent a priority alert to Earth Command about an unauthorized human interaction with precursor technology. Imagine my surprise when the description matched my most troublesome lieutenant. In my defense, sir. Save it. Zhukov cut him off, then turned to address the assembled aliens. On behalf of the United Earth Government, I apologize for Lieutenant Winter's typical disregard for protocol, personal safety, and common sense. Dr. Kiskit's antennae twitched rapidly. General, you misunderstand. This is not a diplomatic incident. It's a breakthrough. The human has done what 300 species could not. He has successfully bonded with precursor technology! Zhukov's expression shifted from anger to calculation so quickly that Alex could practically hear the gears turning in the old man's head. Has he now? The general stroked his salt and pepper beard thoughtfully. And what exactly does this bonding entail? Perhaps the lieutenant could demonstrate, suggested Tholax, gelatinous form quivering with barely contained excitement. All eyes turned to Alex, who suddenly felt like a lab specimen. CYT? Any party tricks we can show them without, accidentally vaporizing the diplomatic wing? The AI's voice resonated directly into his mind. Basic gravitic manipulation should be suitably impressive while remaining well within safety parameters. Got it, Alex muttered, then addressed the room. Okay, folks, prepare to be amazed by the incredible floating human act. Concentrating as KUIT had instructed during their brief mental tutorial, Alex visualized himself rising slowly off the ground. Immediately, he felt a curious sensation of weightlessness as his boots lifted several inches from the floor. The effect on his audience was electric. Dr. Kiskit's mandibles clicked so rapidly they became a blur. Ambassador Tholax's entire body rippled with excitement, and General Zhukov's expression was that of a man who had just been handed the winning lottery ticket for the entire solar system. Impressive, the general said, in what had to be the understatement of the century. What else can it do? Alex grinned. Well, according to the brochure, pretty much everything short of making me a god. But maybe we should save the antimatter weapons demonstration for somewhere less breakable? Look, I'm going to level with you. Finding out you're genetically compatible with the galaxy's most advanced weapon system is a lot like discovering you've won a cosmic lottery, where the prize is a target painted on your back. Within hours of my little floating demonstration, the news had spread across every diplomatic channel and classified military network in known space. By the next day, I had been reassigned from my cushy liaison position at the Galactic Embassy to Earth Command's Special Projects Division. This sounds cooler than it actually was. In practice, it meant being locked in a secure facility while scientists and military brass argued over my head about what to do with their new human weapon. The suit is clearly precursor technology, insisted Dr. Haruki Tanaka, Earth's leading xenoarchaeologist. She circled me like a shark, scanning the armor with instruments that beeped and whirred in scientific excitement. The materials alone should be impossible according to our current understanding of quantum mechanics. The power source appears to be some form of zero-point energy extraction. Fascinating, General Zhukov replied in a tone that indicated he found it about as fascinating as watching paint dry. But what can it do for Earth's defense capabilities? I cleared my throat. I'm standing right here, They both ignored me, which was becoming a theme. The adaptive properties alone could revolutionize our material sciences. Dr. Tanaka continued, tapping her tablet excitedly. Not to mention the gravitic manipulation capabilities we observed. The Vargar Collective will certainly be interested in this development, Zhukov mused, stroking his beard. They've been pushing their borders toward the Arcturus mining colonies for months. Again, I raised my voice slightly. Still in the room, people. CUIT's voice chimed in my head. Their behavior is consistent with patterns observed in species who suddenly acquire access to technology beyond their development curve. Your personal agency has been temporarily reclassified as a secondary concern to the strategic implications. Thanks for the pep talk, I muttered. You are welcome. Would you like me to deploy countermeasures to regain their attention? What kind of countermeasures are we talking about here? Options range from mild electromagnetic pulses that would disable their recording devices to a full sensory override that would render you temporarily invisible to their perception. I blinked. You can make me invisible? Negative. I can manipulate local photonic patterns and neural responses to create the illusion of invisibility. That's basically the same thing. From a functional perspective, yes. From a technical perspective. Lieutenant Winters! Zhukov's voice cut through my internal dialogue like a chainsaw. Are you listening to a word we're saying? I snapped back to attention. Sorry, sir. Just having a chat with my new roommate. Dr. Tanaka's eyes widened. The AI is communicating with you? What is it saying? Is it sharing technical specifications? Historical data about the precursors? Mostly it's correcting my terminology and explaining why I'm wrong about everything, I replied dryly. We're getting along great. Zhukov pinched the bridge of his nose, a universal gesture of exasperation that transcended species and, apparently, technological eras. Lieutenant, I need you to focus. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss this development. Every spacefaring species will be watching. We need to present a unified front. A unified front about what exactly? I crossed my arms, which caused the armor to shift slightly, adjusting to my movement with fluid precision. Because from where I'm standing, or floating earlier, this seems less like a diplomatic issue and more like everyone wanting a piece of the cool alien tech that decided to play dress-up with me. Dr. Tanaka and General Zhukov exchanged glances. That's not entirely inaccurate, Tanaka admitted. Lieutenant, Zhukov's voice dropped to a more confidential tone. You must understand. The balance of power in this sector has been maintained by careful diplomacy and technological parity for decades. Your bonding with this precursor artifact could destabilize everything. Or, I suggested, we could just tell everyone it's a really fancy spacesuit that happens to like humans, and we have no intention of using it to conquer the galaxy or whatever they're afraid of. Zhukov's expression suggested he had considered, and possibly planned for the conquer the galaxy option. QUIT, I thought internally. What's your take on all this political maneuvering? Based on historical data from 734 similar technological disruption events across various civilizations, there is an 87.3% probability that attempts will be made to study, duplicate, or acquire this combat system by force within the next 96 hours. That's not great. Indeed. I recommend preparing defensive contingencies. I sighed and addressed the room again. Look, before we get too deep into galactic politics, there's something you should know. CUIT, that's the suit's AI, thinks there's a pretty good chance someone's going to try to take this thing by force. Soon. Zhukov's expression hardened. Who? The Vargar? The Arcturian Concordat? No specifics, just a high probability based on historical precedent. Apparently, when someone gets cool new tech, everyone else gets grabby. Then we need to move you to a secure location immediately, Zhukov decided, already reaching for his comm unit. The lunar base has containment facilities designed for... A distant explosion cut him off, the sound reverberating through the building followed by the unmistakable wail of security alarms. Dr. Tanaka's tablet lit up with emergency notifications. Perimeter breach in sectors 3 through 7. Multiple hostiles. Zhukov's face went grim. It seems your AI's prediction was accurate, Lieutenant. Unfortunately, its timeline was not. I felt a strange calm settle over me as the suit's systems began to activate without my conscious input. Threat detected, Suet announced in my mind. Combat protocols initializing. Would you prefer offensive or defensive priority? As the sound of weapons fire echoed down the corridor, I made my decision. Let's start with keep everyone alive as the priority, CUIT. Acknowledged. Deploying protective field. The thing about advanced alien battlesuits that nobody tells you in the brochure is how utterly, mind-blowingly weird it feels to have your body moving with perfect efficiency without your brain needing to micromanage every muscle group. It's like the difference between driving a car with manual transmission and suddenly finding yourself behind the wheel of a vehicle that not only drives itself, but can also fly, teleport, and possibly make brunch. As the first wave of attackers, mercenaries wearing the distinctive biomechanical enhancements of the Vargar Collective, burst through the laboratory doors, I found myself moving with impossible speed. The suit propelled me forward, shields already deployed, as I grabbed Dr. Tanaka and General Zhukov and pulled them behind an overturned research table. "Stay down!" I shouted, as energy weapons fire lanced through the air where we had been standing moments before. "Combat analysis complete," Siwat informed me calmly. 12 hostiles, Vargar augmented mercenaries armed with standard collective plasma disruptors. Threat level, moderate. Only moderate? I thought back incredulously as a plasma bolt sizzled past my helmet. Correct. Their weapons are insufficient to penetrate primary shielding. Would you like me to demonstrate appropriate countermeasures? Nothing lethal, I insisted, peeking over the makeshift barricade to assess the situation. The mercenaries were spreading out, using standard military formation to secure the laboratory. They moved with the precision of professionals, which made this situation both better and worse. Better because professionals might be reasoned with. Worse because they wouldn't make amateur mistakes. Understood. Configuring non-lethal response. Without warning, my arm raised itself, palm outward. A pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the suit's gauntlet, expanding in a wave that swept across the room. Every electronic device in its path, including the mercenaries' weapons and augmentations, sparked and went dead. The sudden silence was broken only by the confused shouts of the attackers and the soft hum of my suit. EMP variant, Hewitt explained, specifically calibrated to target Vargar technology signatures while avoiding damage to Earth systems. Nice trick, I muttered, standing up from behind the barricade. The mercenaries turned toward me, their expressions a mixture of shock and growing concern as they realized their weapons were useless. "Gentlemen," I announced, my voice amplified by the suit to ensure everyone could hear me clearly. "I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we discuss whatever it is you want without all the shooting?" The lead mercenary, a tall, gray-skinned Vargar with extensive cybernetic implants across the left side of his face, all currently dark and inactive, stepped forward. "The collective requires the precursor technology," he stated flatly. "Surrender it, and you will not be harmed." I laughed, which probably wasn't the most diplomatic response, but come on, the irony was too perfect. "Slight problem with your plan there, Chief. The technology you're after is currently wearing me like a favorite sweater, and it seems pretty attached." I gestured to the sleek armor encasing my body. "Also, you might have noticed that your weapons don't work so well against it." The Vargar commander's expression didn't change. "We have authorization to extract by any means necessary. If the suit cannot be separated from the host, then the host will be taken as well." "Yeah, that's not happening either." General Zhukov had recovered his composure and moved to stand beside me. "This is a direct violation of the Arcturus Treaty. The collective's actions could be considered an act of war against Earth." The commander's cybernetic eye flickered briefly as emergency power rerouted through his systems. "The collective recognizes that the power balance has shifted. The treaty is no longer relevant." "Power balance?" I snorted. "Look around, pal. Your squad is currently standing in a room with disabled weapons while I'm wearing what might be the most advanced combat system ever created. How's that for power balance?" Dr. Tanaka tugged at my arm, whispering urgently. "Lieutenant, antagonizing them might not be the best approach." She had a point. Diplomatic incident aside, there were still 12 trained mercenaries in the room, and emergency backup systems would eventually kick in for their augmentations. TUET, any suggestions for resolving this peacefully? Historical data suggests a demonstration of superior capability often achieves compliance without further conflict. Show off a bit, you mean? Affirmative. I cleared my throat and addressed the Vargar commander again. "How about this? Your team lays down whatever weapons you have left, and in return, I don't demonstrate what this suit can really do to the structural integrity of this building with all of us inside it." The commander's organic eye narrowed. "You would not risk harming yourself or your comrades." TUIT. Little help with the convincing. Without verbal acknowledgement, the suit's systems hummed to life. A translucent blue sphere expanded outward from me, enveloping Zhukov and Tanaka before I even realized what was happening. Outside the sphere, every loose object in the laboratory, papers, instruments, chairs, even the massive research table we'd been hiding behind, began to float gently upward, suspended in a controlled gravitational field. The protective field around your allies would allow them to survive even in vacuum, CUIT explained in my mind. The gravitational disruption is currently minimal, but could be increased to structural damage levels if required. The mercenaries exchanged uneasy glances as their boots began to lose contact with the floor. "Lieutenant," General Zhukov said cautiously from inside the blue sphere, "perhaps a less dramatic approach." Before I could respond, the laboratory doors slid open again. This time, however, it wasn't more mercenaries but Ambassador Tholax, his gelatinous form quivering with what might have been indignation. "What?" The ambassador's translator device intoned with impressive gravitas for something attached to a blob. "Is the meaning of this outrage?" The floating mercenaries and the general anti-gravity situation seemed to register with Tholax, who paused briefly before continuing. "Commander Vikern, the Galactic Council has not authorized any military action. Your collective assured us they would abide by diplomatic protocols regarding the precursor artifact." The Vargar commander, Vikern, apparently, managed to look somewhat abashed despite floating sideways near the ceiling. "The collective's interests," he began. "The collective's interests do not supersede council authority," Tholax interrupted, his usual diplomatic tone replaced by something sharper. "Particularly when those interests involve armed assault on a member species' research facility." I decided this was a good moment to de-escalate the situation.
QET, maybe put everyone back on the ground, gently, as you wish. The gravitational field slowly normalized, allowing the mercenaries and various laboratory equipment to settle back onto the floor with surprising gentleness.
"Thanks, Ambassador," I nodded to Tholax. "Your timing is excellent." "Indeed." The ambassador's eye stalks swiveled toward me. "Though I must admit I am impressed by your restraint, Lieutenant. Many would have responded more aggressively to such provocation." I shrugged, which looked pretty cool in the battlesuit if I do say so myself. Violence isn't always the answer, even with a fancy alien war machine strapped to my body. Tholax turned back to Commander Vikern. "The Council has called for an emergency session to address this situation properly. All interested parties will have opportunity to present their positions. Until then, no action is to be taken regarding the precursor technology or its current bearer." The commander seemed to calculate his options before finally nodding curtly. "We will withdraw, for now." "Excellent choice." Tholax's body rippled in what might have been the gelatinous equivalent of a satisfied smile. "Council representatives will escort your team back to your vessel." As if on cue, a detachment of the multi-species Galactic Security Force entered the laboratory, their distinctive blue armor marking them as the Council's official peacekeepers. Once the Vargar mercenaries had been escorted out, Ambassador Tholax turned his attention fully to me, General Zhukov, and Dr. Tanaka. "I apologize for this incident," he said, genuinely contrite. "The discovery of functional precursor technology has unsettled many within the galactic community." "No kidding," I muttered. "We'd never have guessed from the armed invasion." Zhukov shot me a warning glance before addressing Tholax. "What exactly does this emergency council session entail, Ambassador? Earth will not surrender control of technology bonded to one of our citizens." Tholax's eye stalks drooped slightly. "That is precisely the issue at hand, General. The precursors were the most advanced civilization this galaxy has ever known. Their technology reshaped worlds, created life, and some say they even manipulated the fundamental constants of reality itself." "And?" Zhukov prompted. "And they vanished over 100,000 years ago, leaving behind only fragments of their legacy. Most council species have spent millennia studying these fragments without ever activating them." Tholax's eye stalks focused intently on me. "Then a human touches one artifact and instantly gains access to power that could potentially destabilize the entire galactic order." "When you put it that way," I said, "I can see why some folks might be nervous." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward.
Surely scientific cooperation would benefit everyone. If Lieutenant Winters could work with researchers from various species, that may indeed be part of the solution. Tholax agreed.
"But first, the Council must determine whether humans can be trusted with such power." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "Have you met humans, Ambassador? Half the time, I don't trust us with the power we already have." "An interesting perspective, Lieutenant," Tholax replied. "Perhaps you should share it with the Council directly. Your presence has been requested at the emergency session. The way he hesitated before requested told me everything I needed to know about how optional this invitation was.
When do we leave? I asked.
Immediately, Tholax answered. The council convenes in 6 hours. The Galactic Council chamber was exactly the sort of place you'd expect ancient, advanced civilizations to gather for important space politics, a massive cathedral-like structure floating in the neutral territory between major stellar nations. The central chamber was a perfect sphere, with delegates seated, or hovering, or swimming in specialized tanks, according to their species' needs and political alignments. As the Earth delegation entered, consisting of myself, still in the precursor suit because no one had figured out how to remove it, General Zhukov representing Earth military interests, Dr. Tanaka for the scientific perspective, and a hastily summoned diplomatic team, we were met with a wall of sound. Hundreds of species, thousands of representatives, all buzzing, clicking, hooting, or otherwise vocalizing their opinions on the human who had casually upended galactic power structures by putting on what amounted to cosmic battle pajamas. "Stay close," Zhukov muttered as we were led to Earth's modest section, "and try not to activate any doomsday weapons while we're here." "No promises," I whispered back. Kuit gets twitchy when I'm nervous. "I do not get twitchy," the AI responded in my head with what almost sounded like indignation. "My response protocols are precisely calibrated to threat assessment." It was a joke, CUIT. Human humor. I am still compiling appropriate response algorithms. The chamber quieted as the council arbiter, a massive, crystalline entity that was rumored to be one of the oldest living beings in the galaxy, floated to the center of the chamber. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now convened." The arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber without any visible translation technology. "The matter before us concerns the activation of precursor technology by a representative of Earth, a Level 3 civilization." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates at the mention of Earth's classification. "For those unfamiliar," the arbiter continued, "Level 3 denotes a species that has achieved faster-than-light travel, but has not yet established full integration with galactic society or demonstrated long-term stability in wielding advanced technologies." "Well, that's not patronizing at all," I muttered. "The Council will hear statements from all interested parties before deliberating on an appropriate response. First, the human currently bonded with the precursor combat system. All eyes, eye stalks, sensory clusters, and various other perceptive organs turned toward me. I felt Kuet monitoring my vital signs as my heart rate spiked. "Go ahead, Lieutenant." Zhukov nudged me. "Try to sound diplomatic." I stepped forward, the suit automatically adjusting to enhance my voice projection without my conscious input. Greetings, esteemed council members. I'm Lieutenant Alex Winters of Earth Space Command. About 48 hours ago, I touched a weird alien artifact, and now I'm wearing what might be the galaxy's most advanced battlesuit. This wasn't exactly planned." The chamber remained silent, thousands of representatives watching intently. "Look," I continued, abandoning the formal approach since it wasn't my strong suit anyway, pun intended. "I understand why everyone's freaking out. If some other species suddenly got access to technology that could potentially shift the balance of power, humans would be nervous too. Probably more than nervous. We'd probably be doing exactly what the Vargur tried earlier, minus the getting caught part." A shocked murmur ran through the chamber at my candor. "But here's the thing, neither Earth nor I asked for this. The suit chose me, apparently because some precursor scientists played around with human DNA eons ago. That's not our fault. And from what CUIT, the suit's AI, has told me, it's not even particularly special. I'm just the first compatible genetic match to touch it in 30,000 years. The Vargur representative stood, his cybernetics fully functional again and glowing an angry red. "The human admits their species was engineered by the precursors. This confirms our suspicions that humans were designed as weapons." "That's not what I began, but was cut off by the Arcturian delegate's high-pitched squeal. "If the precursors designed humans as weapon-bearers, then all humans must be contained until their true purpose is determined. The risk is too great." The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments, accusations, and demands. Species that had been political enemies for millennia suddenly found common ground in their mutual fear of humans with precursor tech. "QIT," I thought desperately. "A little help here?" "I am analyzing the political dynamics," the AI responded in my head. "This reaction is consistent with historical patterns when technological paradigms shift unexpectedly. Fear is the predominant emotion in 87% of delegates." "Great. They're terrified of me. Any suggestions? Based on historical precedent across 734 similar scenarios, a demonstration of peaceful intent combined with technological superiority has a 63% success rate in diffusing immediate hostilities. So, show them I'm friendly but powerful enough that attacking would be a bad idea? Precisely. The Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with light, gradually restoring order to the chamber. We will have order. This council has existed for 12,000 years without descending into such disorder. As the noise subsided, I stepped forward again. If I may continue. The Arbiter's light dimmed slightly in acknowledgement. Proceed, Lieutenant Winters. Thank you. I took a deep breath. I understand your fears. New technology, especially powerful technology, is scary. But I think there's something important everyone's missing here. I gestured around the chamber. Look at us. Hundreds of different species, all evolved on different worlds, with different biologies, different cultures, different ways of thinking. And yet, here we are, in the same room, attempting, with varying degrees of success, to talk to each other, instead of immediately resorting to violence. The Vargar representative snorted. Spare us the sentimental platitudes, human. It's not sentiment, it's my point, I countered. The precursors were advanced enough to engineer genetic compatibility across species, to create technology that would last tens of thousands of years, to potentially reshape reality itself. If they wanted to create weapons or conquer the galaxy, they could have done it themselves. They didn't need humans, or anyone else. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward to stand beside me. Lieutenant Winters is correct. From everything we know about the precursors, they were builders and creators, not conquerors. Their artifacts have been found across thousands of worlds, often in contexts suggesting they were left as gifts or tools, not weapons. Ambassador Tholax oozed forward slightly. The human delegation raises an interesting point. Perhaps we should ask the only being in this chamber who might actually know the precursor's intentions. All eyes turned back to me, or more specifically to the suit I was wearing. Cue it? They want to hear from you, I thought. I can project my voice through the suit's external systems if you permit it. Go ahead. A moment later, CUIT's calm, measured voice emanated from the suit, startling many of the delegates. Greetings, Galactic Council. I am Combat Utility Intelligence Template 935, an artificial intelligence created by those you call the precursors. I can confirm that Lieutenant Winters' genetic compatibility is not coincidental. The precursors seeded compatible genetic markers throughout this galaxy in multiple species as part of what they termed the Continuity Protocol. The chamber fell completely silent. The precursors did not vanish due to war or disaster as many have speculated. They chose to leave this galaxy after determining that continued interference in evolutionary development would be ethically unjustifiable. However, they did not wish to leave their accumulated knowledge entirely lost. A holographic display suddenly projected from my suit, showing a spiraling DNA helix with specific sequences highlighted. These genetic markers were designed to activate only when the host species achieved sufficient technological and cognitive development to understand what they were receiving. Humans are not the only compatible species, merely the first to make contact with this particular system. The Arcturian delegate's voice rang out. If what you say is true, which other species carry these markers? TUET's response was immediate. I detect compatible genetic signatures in at least 17 species represented in this chamber, including the Arcturians, Vesperian, Jovian, and yes, Vargar populations. The revelation sent a shockwave through the assembly. Species that moments ago had been calling for human containment now found themselves potentially in the same category. The Vargar representative's cybernetic eye flickered rapidly. This changes nothing. The humans still possess the only functioning precursor weapon system. Correction, CUAT replied. The Combat Skin Mark 7 is not classified as a weapon system. It is designated as a continuity vessel, a means of preserving and gradually disseminating precursor knowledge to compatible species as they become ready to receive it. Then why does it have combat capabilities? Demanded another delegate. Because knowledge must sometimes be protected, Kuat answered simply. The precursors understood that technological disruption often triggers conflict. The defensive capabilities exist to ensure the knowledge survives such periods of transition. I decided to take back control of the conversation. Look, I don't pretend to understand everything that's happening here. 3 days ago, I was just a regular Earth military officer with a talent for getting into trouble. Now I'm wearing a talking alien supersuit and addressing the galactic equivalent of the United Nations. It's been a weird week. This earned a ripple of what might have been laughter from several delegates. But I do know this: if the precursors wanted to give us all this knowledge, it wasn't so we could immediately use it to fight each other. That would be pretty counterproductive, right? General Zhukov stepped forward, his military bearing commanding attention. Earth proposes the following. Lieutenant Winters and the precursor system will remain under Earth protection, but we offer open scientific collaboration with all Council species to study and understand the technology. Knowledge gained will be shared according to Council protocols for technological dissemination. The Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed thoughtfully. A reasonable proposal. Are there other suggestions before the Council deliberates? The Varga representative stood again. The collective proposes a rotation system. The human may temporarily bond with the system, but it must be made available to other compatible species on a scheduled basis. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Yeah, slight problem there. Kuat has informed me that the bonding process is permanent, at least for the lifespan of the user. That is correct, Kuat confirmed, voice projecting through the chamber again. The neural and biological integration cannot be reversed without causing fatal damage to both the host and the system, and that quieted the rotation suggestions pretty quickly. Additionally, Kuat continued, I am programmed to transfer knowledge gradually, at a pace that will not overwhelm the host species' development curve. Attempting to extract information beyond the current release schedule would trigger safety protocols. Dr. Tanaka looked fascinated. You mean the suit is deliberately limiting what it shares based on what we're ready for? Correct, Doctor. The precursors witnessed many species destroy themselves by acquiring knowledge before developing the wisdom to use it properly. The Arbiter's light pulsed again. The Council will now deliberate. All delegations are asked to withdraw to the antechambers. The deliberation took nearly 12 hours. 12 hours of pacing, arguing with Earth Command via secure comms, and listening to CUIT explain precursor philosophy, which seemed to involve a lot of cryptic statements about cycles of knowledge and evolutionary responsibility. When we were finally called back into the chamber, the Arbiter's crystalline form had taken on a deep blue glow. The Council has reached a decision, the ancient entity announced. The human known as Lieutenant Alexander Winters will retain the precursor system, designated as Combat Utility Intelligence Template 935. Earth will provide protection and appropriate resources for the lieutenant, with oversight from a Council-appointed committee of representatives from compatible species. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Furthermore, the Arbiter continued, Lieutenant Winters will participate in a knowledge-sharing program, allowing scientific and cultural exchange as the precursor system gradually releases its information. All data will be documented and distributed according to Council protocols. General Zhukov nodded gravely. Earth accepts these terms. The Arbiter's glow intensified. There is one final condition. As the first bearer of precursor knowledge in the modern era, Lieutenant Winters must serve as an ambassador, not just for Earth, but for all potential compatible species. This role will require extensive travel throughout Council space, meetings with representatives of all major civilizations, and participation in ceremonial functions to symbolize the peaceful distribution of knowledge. I blinked in surprise. Wait, you want me to be a galactic diplomat? An ambassador of knowledge, the Arbiter corrected. A living symbol of the precursor's legacy and the Council's commitment to shared advancement. General Zhukov turned to me, one eyebrow raised in question. I sighed. Well, it beats getting shot at by mercenaries. I accept. Then it is decided, the Arbiter declared. This Council recognizes Alexander Winters of Earth as the first knowledge-bearer of the modern galactic era. May wisdom guide your path. And just like that, my career took a sharp turn from slightly troublesome military officer to glorified space librarian with an indestructible suit. The universe has a weird sense of humor like that. 6 months later, I found myself standing on the observation deck of the Council diplomatic vessel Enlightened Exchange, watching the swirling clouds of the Carina Nebula as we approached the homeworld of the Gra, a reclusive crystalline species that had largely avoided galactic politics for millennia. They're only agreeing to meet because of you, you know, remarked Dr. Tanaka, who had been assigned as Earth's scientific liaison to my new Ambassador of Knowledge role. She had proven to be both brilliant and adaptable, taking to interstellar diplomacy with surprising ease. Me or the fancy tech I'm wearing? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Both, technically, she replied with a smile. The Gra have their own legends about the precursors. They call them the Shapers of Paths. Another religious angle? Great. I'd spent much of the past 6 months discovering that many species had incorporated the mysterious precursors into their belief systems, which made my job complicated. Not religious exactly, Tanaka corrected. More philosophical. The Gra believe that knowledge itself is sacred, and those who share it are performing the highest possible service. So I'm a glorified librarian to them too. At least we're consistent. Dr. Tanaka laughed. You've come a long way from the officer who touched an alien artifact because he was bored and curious. Hey, that boredom and curiosity got us pretty far, didn't it? Indeed it did, she agreed, turning back to the viewport. Earth's status in the Council has improved dramatically. We've been upgraded to level 4 civilization status, with all the trade and technology benefits that entails. And the scientific breakthroughs from just the first tier of precursor knowledge have revolutionized our understanding of quantum physics. I nodded, watching the nebula's colors shift and dance. Quit says we're ready for the second knowledge tier soon. Something about advanced gravitics and consciousness theory. The Vargar will be excited about the gravitics, Tanaka noted. They've been surprisingly cooperative since the Council ruling. Nothing like the promise of getting cool tech eventually to make former enemies play nice, I observed. My suit hummed softly as Kiwat joined the conversation. The precursors observed this pattern across multiple galaxies. Access to knowledge is a more effective peacekeeping tool than any weapon. I raised an eyebrow, though the gesture was hidden behind my helmet. Says the advanced battlesuit with antimatter weaponry. As I have explained, the combat capabilities are defensive measures to ensure knowledge survival. The primary function has always been preservation and dissemination. I know, CUIT. I'm just teasing you. After 6 months of constant interaction, the AI had developed what I could only describe as a personality. Still formal and precise, but with occasional flashes of something almost like humor or pride. Whether this was an actual evolution of its programming, or just my human tendency to anthropomorphize everything, I wasn't sure. Probably a bit of both. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Ambassador Tholax's gelatinous form appeared on the nearby communication panel. Lieutenant Winters, Dr. Tanaka, we will be entering Gura space within the hour. Their philosophical conclave has prepared a reception ceremony that will apparently last for 3 full day cycles, I groaned. Please tell me it doesn't involve standing perfectly still for hours like the Arcturian welcome ritual. Tholax's eye stalks wiggled in what might have been amusement. No, but it does involve extensive recitation of knowledge lineages. The Gra believe that tracing the origin of ideas is fundamental to understanding them. Fascinating, Dr. Tanaka said, genuinely interested. It's similar to how human academic papers cite previous works. Except probably a lot longer, and without the option to skim through the boring parts, I added. Tholax's form rippled. Lieutenant, may I remind you that your role as knowledge-bearer requires cultural sensitivity? Relax, Ambassador, I grinned. I'll be on my best behavior. CUIT won't let me embarrass humanity anyway. Last time I tried to use the wrong ceremonial greeting, the suit literally took control of my arm to correct the gesture. A necessary intervention, CUIT commented in my mind. The alternate gesture you were about to use is considered a reproductive invitation among the Vesperian subspecies. See? My own clothes are censoring me now. Diplomacy is perfectly safe. Tholax seemed somewhat reassured. The Gra representative will meet us in the shuttle bay in 40 minutes. Please be prepared. As the ambassador's image disappeared, I turned back to the nebula view, contemplating how drastically my life had changed. From troublemaking lieutenant to galactic knowledge ambassador, all because I couldn't resist touching a weird alien artifact. You know what's funny? I said to Dr. Tanaka. 6 months ago, when all this started, everyone was terrified that humans would use this technology to conquer the galaxy or something equally dramatic. Now I spend my days attending ceremonies, listening to philosophical debates about knowledge ethics, and being a walking, talking library. Tanaka smiled. Disappointed? I thought about it for a moment. Actually, no. It turns out sharing knowledge across species is more interesting than shooting at them. Who knew? The precursors, apparently, she replied. Kuwait's voice chimed in my head. The Shapers of Paths would be pleased with your conclusion, Lieutenant. It is precisely what they hoped for when they established the continuity protocol. I laughed. Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint some ancient aliens who apparently played with human DNA just so I could wear their fancy suit one day. As we prepared to meet the GRA delegation, I couldn't help reflecting on the irony of it all. Humanity had spent centuries imagining first contact scenarios, from peaceful exchanges to violent invasions. We'd worried about being technologically inferior, about being conquered or exploited by more advanced civilizations. No one had predicted that our greatest galactic contribution would be our innate curiosity. That same reckless, grab-the-shiny-thing impulse that had both gotten us into trouble and propelled our advancement throughout human history.
No alien could wear the armor until a human touched it.
And everything really did change, just not in the way anyone expected. The universe, it turns out, has a better imagination than we do, and a much better sense of humor. The end.